Yay, hopefully we'll be going.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us virtually and in person for the few of us who were able to make it here. This is the January 26th, 2023 meeting of the Distress Union Appeal Board. My name is Justin McAdam. I am the chair of the board. Before we get started, as is our custom, we will take public comment. At the moment, we do have two people signed up to testify, Ms. Tracy Coleman joining us virtually and Ms. Lavetta Tyndall here with us in person. So if you have not yet had a chance to indicate that you would like to testify here today or make public comment, please do send a message through the virtual portal, and we will be sure to add you to the list. Before we do that, before we start public comment, we will move to the approval of minutes to give people time, and then come back around to public comment. We do have a number of meeting minutes to review here today. We've had a number of meetings since the last opportunity we had to do this. We have the November 17th, 2022 public meeting minutes, the December 15th, 2022 public meeting minutes, and two executive session minutes from December 6th and December 15th. Those have been circulated in advance. Are there any comments, questions, or edits that any member would like to make to those minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
So is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Because we have members joining us virtually and in person, we will call the roll. Mr. Miller, will you call the roll?
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Ms. Kabaki,
Yes.
Chairman McAdams,
Yes,
that's 4-0.
minutes are approved. Thank you. We will now turn to public comment. Ms. Tyndall, if you'd like to join us here at the podium.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am Mrs. Lavetta Tyndall, a tax-paying, property-owning citizen and 1966 honors graduate of the historically and academically profound, architecturally renowned Gary Theodore Roosevelt High School, one of the greatest institutions of learning ever in these United States of America. My late husband of 37 years and I are parents of children who graduated from Westside High School and college. Please note my sign. We are stressing again and continue to stress that MVP needs to be fired. The person that is serving as administrator needs to be replaced sooner than later. I want to bring to your attention my concern regarding the 2022 graduating class of the Westside Leadership Academy and their yearbook. Regrettably, some of the pictures of the students in that book did not have names under their pictures. I have questions, and I'm sorry that the administrator of the Gary Schools is not here today. Is she going to join us by way of Zoom?
She is joining us virtually.
Oh, good, okay. And others on her staff can, I can.
Yes.
Yes, what?
Others of her staff are here.
Oh, okay, thank you. What's the status of improvement regarding the keyboarding curriculum being added to the students' courses? What's the status of absenteeism and bus services? Is there any word on our owning our own buses and running our transportation services to better accommodate our students? Has the menu of the students' meals changed, and if so, how? And to what extent? How many 2022 graduates received certificates of attendance? What's the sanitary status of the restrooms in the Gary schools? What's the status of the care of special ed students? What's the status and number and ratio of teachers to students? Is it 1 to 25, 1 to 45? Are there interpreters? What's the status of interpreters for our non-English speaking students that attend our schools? When will STEM, visual arts, and graphic arts, I don't know what that word is. Oh, okay,
3 minutes expired.
thank you. When will the status of availability of STEM courses, visual art classes, and graphic art classes be available to all students, not just to some? What are you doing about the sale? This is addressed to DUAB. What in particular? What are you doing about the sale of Pulaski School to a food manufacturing company and the sale of Williams School? And a school that is currently operating and functioning to educate our children. What are you doing about that? When are you bringing DUAB's meeting to Gary, Indiana? What's the status of the referendum ambassadors? When will we hear from them? When will an accurate account be given of spending referendum funds? Where are the referendum ambassadors regarding the funds? The referendum is wrongly being credited for the West Side Football Stadium, though the referendum is not to be used for capital improvements. There are things that are going on among the current administration that indicate carelessness, insensitivity, heartlessness, weakness in math skills, because there's several numbers and figures that are associated with the total number of students that graduated in 2022 from Westside Leadership Academy, and they don't jive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tindall. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Next, we do have Ms. Tracy Coleman joining us virtually. Ms. Coleman, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to start off to ask that the Distress Unit Appeal Board that you address the busing situation for the Gary Community School Corporation. As a resident of Gary, I am very concerned with the numbers of buses that are unable to pick up our children. And the reality with DUAB, the landscape of the school district changed where we went to one high school. So based on DUAB initiating something which really hinders our children walking to school, DUAB has a moral obligation to make sure that our children in Gary do not miss school because of the buses. And I would suggest that the Indiana Department of Education, through their transportation director, do an audit of how many of our children are missing school simply because they cannot get a ride there. The other concern too, I'm glad that the Career Center offers a pilot license, but I would definitely suggest that we look at the Career Center offering driver's education classes so some of the students are able to get a driver's license in Gary. And there's been discussion of grow your own teachers. There's an urgency for us to grow our own bus drivers. And so I would implore DUAB to do the research. How much will it cost for the Gary Community School Corporation to buy its own buses, buy its own vans, to set up a program at the Career Center so that we could develop our generation of bus drivers So we're not bombarded with children being disappointed that they missed another school day because the bus was not there. The next thing I would like to discuss are the bathrooms. On March 3rd, 2022, when our students walked out, it was due to the conditions. And one of the things that we thought would happen for sure with all of the COVID-19 monies was that the bathrooms at West Side would be renovated. This still has not happened. When parents worked hard to get T65, at that point, there was not a public health emergency. There still exists a public health emergency. So we're asking that DUAB take initiative to make sure those bathrooms at West Side, our only high school now, are renovated. And lastly, academics is always a concern. The community, many people are horrified at the scores that have crashed. And after a while, if you as a parent paid a tutor $8 million to tutor your child, and your child continues to get F's and fail, there comes a moment when you say something is not working. And this is where I will just definitely ask DUAB, as parents and community members, go to Indianapolis to say for a restoration of a locally elected school board and our own superintendent, that DUAB does not get into a power struggle for power, but look at that Indiana is a home rule state. People who live here are closest connected to the issues. That the financial crisis, we're thankful that those issues are getting behind us, but we love our children. We see what they're going through. The academics are not improving. So there comes a point when you see 90.8% students being chronically absent, that these students are being stuck in all these credit recovery classes, which some colleges will not even accept. And when you recognize that the core 40, that our children are not able to complete the credits to graduate. And I just would like to leave this as a parent, because in the end, when I called DUAB, I called because I am a parent. I live in Gary and I am concerned. And I think of my son, how they wanted him to take health and wellness in a credit recovery class. And I was like, no, that's unacceptable. And his teacher who taught health and wellness, Dr. Veronica Williams, is an extraordinary teacher. So not only do our students get stuck in front of these computers for credit recovery, trying to get the credits they need to graduate, they lose the opportunity to connect with many of these wonderful, beautiful, talented teachers that we have in our school system, who they will stay in contact with, not just throughout high school, but for the rest of their lives. So thank you for this opportunity to talk, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. All right, that concludes the list of individuals we have signed up to testify. Thank you for taking the time to provide that comment to us. We will turn to the next item on our agenda, where we do have an update on the Gary Community School Corporation from Dr. McNulty, who joins us virtually. Dr. McNulty.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great to see all of you. So I'd like to just start with a couple of updates. One is hopefully you're able to see on your screen a picture, there it is, of the furniture. And I know this has been a big topic around the community here and also within DUAB, but I wanted you to see some of the classrooms that have been, all of the classrooms that have been outfitted with new furniture. We have had overwhelming positive feedback and support and excitement from our kids, parents, and the community. We've done, lots of students have been posting on their Facebook pages and on their social media pages. It has definitely been a big morale booster within our school district, and obviously is helping with that collaborative teaching and learning that we're trying to promote. So I wanted to show you some of the great pictures of the new furniture. So thank you for that. Oh, there they are. Our district is very busy right now, as always, but very busy working on graduation, for example, which we have scheduled, prom, which is upcoming, parent open houses, which are upcoming. We're inviting all the community and parents to be able to come in and see the new classroom setup and meet with their principals and teaching staff. We have several parent trainings that are coming up over the next several weeks that we've been advertising. We're also working on next year's calendar, so that will be posted after we meet with the union for discussion here in the next week or so. We are also working on finalizing our social studies adoption. As you'll probably remember, we've been doing a new adoption of all of our series to get us up to speed with what normal school district should have. So we initially did English year 1, and then math, science, and social studies, so that in 5 years you can continue with that rotation. This is the last of that rotation, being social studies. Elementary has already, the teachers have piloted with the administration and worked collaboratively on picking one. And now we're waiting on the secondary to finish up with their pilot series and surveys. And so we'll be coming back with a recommendation for social studies adoption in the near future. I wanted to give a couple shout outs that we have 2 of our elementary schools that have been notified by the State Department that they've been chosen for a site visit for STEM. So we're excited that hopefully we'll have 2 more schools that will become STEM certified here in the next several months that will add to our services. As you remember, Bailey became STEM certified last year. So we're excited, and great job to the staff and the students there who've been working hard on getting that certification underway. We have 15 student athletes that I want to recognize who got on the 4.0 grade point average list this 9 weeks, which is up 18%, excuse me, from last quarter, and another 20 student athletes who made the 3.7 GPA. And again, I just want to say that that's all huge improvements, and that's due to the study tables and the tutoring that we've implemented after school. So again, kudos to those students. The after-school activity buses that we've implemented for those students to be able to stay after and get transportation home, etc. And then lastly, a giant shout out to one of our students by the name of Anthony King. He's one of our CTE students, and he just recently got hired straight from our CTE school into the Union Hall Local 365 Ironworkers. And they are desperately asking us for any other students that we have that are graduating through that pipeline that they will hire immediately. So he got a great job directly from our CTE program. So I want to say great job to him. We're excited to follow him along with his career. And thank you for the partnership to the Union Hall for that. So, and with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. McNulty. Could you touch on, I know this is an issue that you've been working on diligently, but was brought up by both the commentators around busing and some of the challenges we've had there. Could you speak about those challenges, and then, how efforts to alleviate those?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are, it is unacceptable, the services that we've been receiving through our current vendor with our busing services. We have been in constant communication with them about the need to have better services. We are working on a plan to move forward in a different direction either way so that we can get buses to our students. In the meantime, we have independent contractors that we have on staff that we've hired to get students, and I know Nicole can help speak to this, that we are paying for in addition to our busing services to get our students on. So we have 2 or 3 independent vendors that we've contracted with to get students there, continue to work with our pastors. We continue to pay parents to get students to school. We are still working with the city for those bus passes, but absolutely unacceptable, the bus services that we have been receiving.
Other questions for Dr. McNulty?
Sure.
Yes, Senator Dalton.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Dr. McNulty.
Hi.
Just one question in particular. Since we're in session, of course, the conversations about the future of the district is in place. One question I would have, what is the MGT team doing to put things in place to share with whatever incoming transition is taking place, both operationally and fiscally? Will there be some type of roadmap in terms of where we are, will be left behind in terms of fiscal as well as academic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is absolutely yes. We want to make sure that it's a very smooth transition. We are leaving, all sorts of binders and notes and a roadmap, if you will, so that that can easily be followed. And then in addition, we want to work side by side as this moves forward so that we can be answering any questions and training as much as possible as through the transition.
First, I say happy to be back with you guys. I just walked in. Session is getting ready to start, so pardon me for being late. We just got out of the caucus. Couple things I would just probably mention in terms of academic perspective would be great to just get up to date for myself since I'm getting back into the fold with DUAB and just kind of get maybe a one-on-one with Justin and from a DUAB perspective.
Yes.
To figure out, where you guys think we are.
Absolutely. And Mr. Andre Wright and CEO Kim Bradley are joining us next to give a routine update. We've gotten into a cadence of doing an update on academics every time we meet, but I'd like to connect us all together, maybe have a conversation about that as well, if you're open to that.
Yeah.
Really to give you a download on where things stand and some of the efforts that they've been pursuing over the last several months. In an effort to really, try to pivot on academics and push forward into putting the district in a firmer footing and prepare to transition then to whatever the next governing structure looks like.
Right. And Dr. Minotes, one thing you mentioned about one of the unions, I had a conversation with the carpenters in Indiana, and they're seriously looking for individuals to get into their trade. I'm not sure if you guys have communicated with them. I expressed the Career Center and the opportunities there. One of their leaders of their organization is Travis Williams, and he's from Gary. So hopefully there'll be some opportunities to connect students with folks with the carpenters.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I know Travis, and I believe that we have a meeting actually set up with them in their union hall in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Just
That's great. Dr. McDonald, you mentioned that two schools were maybe on the docket to be STEM certified. Which two schools were those? Or are those?
Banneker and Kim, remind me of the other one.
Sorry, GPA and Beverage.
Beverage, excuse me. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Other questions for Dr. Milton? All right, Dr. Milton, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll turn now to our academic update. And as we said, we have Ms. Kim Bradley and Mr. Andre Wright here to join us and update us on the academic situation.
Good afternoon. I hope all is well and somewhat clear from the events over the past couple of days. And my name is Andre Wright, and I'm here to share where we are currently. And I think we need to move to the next slide so we can begin walking through the process. So for us, when we talked about setting long-term goals for the upcoming school year, the focus was really to recover from COVID and close the gaps with the state between reading, math, and high school graduation with Gary Community Schools. And to do that, we were looking throughout this year to accelerate the growth and proficiency in order to try and meet those goals. And at this particular point, we'll bring you up to speed on where we are as it relates specifically to the progress indicators that we agreed upon. And Mrs. Bradley will then share what those outcomes have been for this particular quarter. Next slide.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Glad to be able to join you. Yes, our Q2 progress indicators are what you're looking at, and we compared, of course. So we have Q1, the status updates, and then what Q2 those updates are. And each quarter we will bring to you these different categories around curriculum and instruction, collaborative structures, and we have data systems and structures. And so For curriculum and instruction, what we looked at is our iReady individualized pathways. And when we look at the iReady looks for passing of those individualized pathways at 70% of the lessons that the students take have to be mastered. And so in Q2, as you can see, we had a 75% pass rate in ELA and 88% pass rate in math. And just to be clear, these are individualized pathways. So a student who starts the year in third grade, wherever they start, they receive through the system a set of individualized lessons to help them move toward proficiency, close the gap. And so we look at they have to have at least 70% in order to have that test or that piece of information that they are learning passed. And so we are at a rate of 75 and 88% for both ELA and math. And so when we look at the next structure is collaborative structures. And so we understand that principals are doing walkthroughs in their buildings at least 3 times daily. And we were able to meet that goal. The other is professional learning communities. This is where the principal, the instructional coach, the teachers come together. They look at their data and make decisions about instruction based on that data. And they had a goal of meeting at least once weekly. And although many schools and many groups meet more than that, but they had to at least meet once weekly. And that goal has been met for Q2. As we look at our next category of data systems and structures, we wanted to pull out attendance. We are working diligently to bring up attendance. And as was discussed earlier, some of it does have to do with our busing, but we are seeing improvement. So on average, schools had 81% student attendance this quarter over last quarter. So we are improving, but we have not yet met our goal of 85% student attendance yet over that quarter. And then finally, PBIS, which is positive behavior interventions with supports. And what we look at is our reaction to behavior issues that occur in the building. So suspensions and expulsions. And each school set their own goal for the year based on the data that we have from last year. And 100% of our schools have met their individual PBIS goals for Q2. You can go to the next slide, please. So just to spotlight on PBIS a little bit, why, what, and how. So PBIS supports learning in that it allows the community in the building to create the conditions for learning. So not a lot of learning can happen unless you have some positive interactions between the adults and children. There's equitability and safe learning environment. And that's why we focused on PBIS as a leverage to help with the learning. And so PBIS is an evidence-based framework that improves social emotional competence and academic success by supporting school culture and school climate. What is PBIS? It's having a shared vision for positive learning environment. It's explicitly teaching the expectations and skills. It is a focus on the positive. It is having the adults in the building think of alternatives to suspensions, because our students learn when they are in school, of course. And so it is best to come up with alternatives when possible. Of course, we have a student handbook that we follow. However, if there are ways that we can have alternatives, we find that best for our students. And then additional instruction and practice for students who need more. And so PBIS looks at students who are at either the highest bit of the triangle, meaning they have the most need, and giving them what they need. And then students at the lowest level, everybody gets exactly what they need. And PBIS also has a school and family component that is very integral to allowing the academics to occur in the building. And then how we're implementing PBIS. through professional development and coaching. Each school has plans and goals around PBIS. We review data monthly, and there are partnerships with local health agencies that support students who need the most support around behavioral and to assist in their academics. You can advance the slide, please. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Wright to wrap up.
At this particular point, we've talked mostly about the operational aspects of the work that's happened within all of our schools. And as we get to our February meeting, we will dig into the iReady component, which is really going to talk specifically about what's happening instructionally, and then match that back to the operations that have occurred throughout the rest of Q3. And we'll bring all that back to the board so we can have a deep dive and get into what that data is speaking to for the mid-month, for the actual middle of the year assessment results. Next slide. That's it.
Are there any questions?
Thank you both for presenting. I appreciate the update. We've talked before about interim assessments, and we talked about data on that and bringing that forward to the board. What do you have data you can share yet regarding interim assessments? I know that's done at the classroom level, obviously, but we talked about some summary statistics maybe that would give us a picture of what that looks like. Could you speak to those?
So our window is not closed yet for our middle of the year assessment for iReady. And so we have some preliminary data, but we're still combing through it at this moment. We will have all of that for February, though.
My
That
understanding,
answers your question.
no, I appreciate the iReady information. I know that's a diagnostic assessment, but my understanding was that there are interim assessments as well that we're tracking. These are assessments that teachers are giving along the way in smaller chunks to ensure that students are mastering content and helping to determine whether, to reteach particular content or move forward at that point. That's what I'm speaking to. Or is there data around those pieces?
We do have some data. We are pulling it all together. They're also taking that assessment this month as well. They're taking we call them CFAs, Common Formative Assessments. So they happen at different integrals across the quarter two. And the plan is to bring all of that to triangulate the data and bring it. The preliminary data is suggesting pretty much the same, that our students on proficiency they struggle most in math. ELA is a little bit higher than math has been. And so there have been discussions around solidifying those math basic concepts, starting at kindergarten, but all the way up, so that our children have the foundation that they need in math instruction.
I see. I don't know that we've ever reviewed the quarter one data, so it would be interesting to look back at that. It may be that we missed that in our cadence. I know we canceled a meeting or two along the way, and I think it would be beneficial as we look at that quarter two data to, keep our eye on quarter one data and look at that longitudinally.
We'll definitely bring all of the CFA information that we can and compare it.
Appreciate that. Are there other questions for Mr. Wright or Ms. Bradley?
Question.
Senator Melton.
Thank you. Quick question in terms of students that may have behavioral issues. I know we talked about, you mentioned that a little bit in there, or alternative options for them. What is what would you say is the percentage per school or per class of students that typically may disrupt the learning experience? Anyone may have an idea of that?
Well, in any school or classrooms, students who disrupt the learning environment are generally a very low percentage. Now, a lot of times in a classroom and in a school, you might imagine, sometimes the focus is often on those students who make the most disruption, but the percentage of students who have issues is in the teens. if that on average. And so that's why we utilize PBIS, because it's a way to switch that focus to what is appropriate and what is expected. And those students who may have some problems or issues with behavior for whatever reason are given those interventions that they need to kind of get back into alignment with what is expected. And so generally you're not going to see a high percent, like 50 or 60%. It's more in the 12, 10% even of students who are going to have some difficulties. You're talking about in a school, probably a school of about 400 kids, you might see 10 kids who are your high flyers, who you need to create interventions for and kind of know what triggers them and have important people in the building to help them out. So that's what PBIS focuses on.
One of the things that we're talking about this session is mental health and mental health funding. And what crossed my mind as we're talking is, I think there are ways that school districts can seek reimbursement, Medicaid, for certain services. I'm not sure, this might be from Ms. Wolverton. Does the Gary Schools tap into any available funding to address the needs of students that may have some mental health issues?
Yes, generally that happens under our special ed umbrella, and we definitely do follow all of those requirements. And we have students who are receiving those services currently, yes.
And we do seek reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right, thank you.
I was intrigued, piggybacking on Senator Melton's inquiry just around the positive behavior intervention, and I'd be interested to maybe at some point, it doesn't have to be next month, but taking a deeper dive on some of the school goals and getting a more granular picture of what that looks like at the school level in terms of what they're aiming for and how that performance is going. So that's just nice to have for the future. If you want to make note of that, I think we'd all benefit from a conversation around it. Yeah, please.
Just a suggestion I would make, you guys may be working on this, I'm not sure. It's typically a trend for years, even before the state we in, that there's an uptick of disruption or violence when the weather gets warm and schools get ready to get out. Are there strategies or plans or conversations on how do we alleviate those type of things? Because typically that spills out inside the school building and it becomes a bigger issue for the entire community. I guess it's more of a conflict resolution thing. Does that fall within that positive behavior intervention?
It does. So one of the focus areas of PBIS is being proactive. And so adults in the buildings are trained in kind of knowing what is occurring. You can see in the environment, they are listening to the conversations that students are having and also responding when students come to that trusted adult. And instead of waiting until something occurs and being reactive to situations, being proactive to have students be able to come in, have conversations, solve conflicts ahead of time. And so as you speak about, like if the weather is warmer, those activities occur all the time. But of course, if there's an uptick in issues, then the adults in the building, we have behavior specialists, we have counselors, our deans, they're all very much tuned into the situations that are occurring and have responses to those and are working to be proactive.
Great. Is there any system in place to communicate with like external stakeholders? For example, if there's an altercation that occurred on the bus or after school, to get on the bus, you know, are parents alerted or, I hate to say law enforcement, but other community stakeholders to let them know, keep an eye on this situation because it could trigger a larger incident.
So actually that happened today.
I
To
was
your
gonna
point,
say
that's
that.
why I thought that's why you're asking. So yes, so yeah, there's coincidentally then, there's 3 of our neighboring districts who've been on lockdown today because of incidents at their high schools. So they're all on lockdown. And so we are all in a safe school committee alliance, if you will. And so we get notified when our neighboring schools or even our own school. And so then we immediately put out an alert to all of our principals, teachers, everybody, so they can watch for things and know what, what to be on alert for. Thankfully, we have not had any incidents here within our school district, but yes, we are in direct communication with our neighboring schools, with our own schools. We have a direct hotline to the sheriff's department, and their cameras feed right into our cameras now, etc.
That's good. Does your cameras feed into the city police?
Not yet. We're working with them on an MOU, but not yet. They have to update their software at the city.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation today. It's always good to hear from you. We'll move next to our financial update. We have Gary Community Schools CFO Nicole Wolverton here with us. Nicole?
Hi, good afternoon. I just have some general finance updates to share. Currently, we have State Board of Accounts in office auditing July 2020 through June of 2022. They arrived just after the new year. Happy New Year. And they will be wrapping up about mid-February. So things are going well so far. The finance department is also diligently working on processing our W-2s and 1099s, which will go out at the end of this month. I do want to commend the department as well as federal programs for all their hard work in January. It's been a very busy month thus far, so I appreciate that. And then last month, we did receive our December property tax settlement with our average collections with about where we expected it to be, with the exception of the operations fund. We collected about 75% of the net levy, where in prior years we collected about 95% or 93% for the year prior to that as well. So just something that we need to be mindful of as we go into 2023. And then I believe Mr. Miller had shared some monthly cash flows with the board as well. So I just want to quickly do some highlights of these. These are not final numbers yet. We're in the process of still reconciling for the year end, as well as producing our Form 9, which is due at the end of this month. But our education fund, we're still operating at a very healthy balance, a little over $3 million is where we're going to end for 2022. And then in our operations fund, I'm going to skip over debt service. Sorry, thank you. Operations fund, this is probably the first time in over a decade that we are going to end the calendar year with a surplus in this fund, which is great. Very exciting for the school district, a huge financial step, and all the progress that we've made over the years, and it definitely shows we are on the right track. So definitely wanted kudos to the team for that as well. Part of operations for 2023, we're going to continue to look at some potential cost savings. We have a janitorial RFP that is out right now. Bids come back at the end of this month. So we look forward to presenting that to the DUAB team in the upcoming months. And then also we've been able to save a pretty significant amount on our property insurance renewal for 2023 as well. And this is largely due in part to some 1065 improvements, which has lowered our risk in the open market. And then on the next slide for the referendum fund, we are ending the referendum fund as well with a healthy balance that will allow us to continue making those operational transfers and transfers for teacher raises that were effective 2020 and then going forward until June for our next property settlement as well. I know I kind of quickly touched on these, but are there any questions? We will present in the upcoming months a more detailed forecast as well as our VDRP, going over some more detailed items with revenue and expenditures for 2022.
Thank you. I believe we also had a 1065 update there in a claims docket. Are there any questions regarding the information that Ms. Wolverton has presented?
Okay. Couple.
Yes, Senator Milton.
In terms of, you might have hit this, so please forgive me if I skipped this or didn't hear it. Do we have a cash reserve yet in terms of the district? And if so, what does that look like?
So currently, there is some proposals in legislation for different amounts that would allow us to save different structures. Currently, we're still held to that 10% of unencumbered funds for our budget. That's why it was kind of key this year that we ended 2022 in a surplus that would allow us those unencumbered funds to make that transfer. In the future, in the upcoming months, once we know a little bit more on statute, I would like to propose a resolution to start the rainy day fund. That has not been set up yet, and then that will have also restrictions on sources and uses of that saving as well. So I think we're making baby steps, but we're headed in the right direction to continue on those cash reserves.
You said there's legislation. What bill would that be in right now?
It's in 367.
Yes.
327, I'm sorry. Senator Mishler's bill related to Gary schools.
Okay.
It basically establishes a special provision for Gary schools to allow them to make a one-time transfer to the rainy day fund in excess of that 10% limit, recognizing that they're in a unique situation and have a need maybe to transfer more dollars
From the general fund to?
From any of their other funds to that fund. So the effort Nicole referenced with respect to some of those more strategic finance analysis that they plan to bring here, hopefully next month. We've been working with them to present a statement that will give us a more clear picture of those cash reserves as they stand today, regardless of where they're held, whether in a traditional rainy day fund or elsewhere. Also give us a real-time picture of that operating surplus so that we can see from a global perspective, where is the district trending and how are they doing?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure post-transition that is a realistic expectation moving forward.
Absolutely.
That is not a mandate that can't be met.
Correct.
So that's one thought I had there. The second question would be, we talked about the referendum. Have we, as a district, continued with the meetings with the ambassador group regarding the referendum? How frequent is that meeting and how frequent is that communication with that group and that organization?
Yes, so we still have.
Well, whichever of you, yes, go ahead.
We still are having those meetings. We typically have them after we receive that June or December property tax disbursement. So we have another one to be scheduled in the next month or so. That will be reflective of 2022 and then those disbursements and future dollars to spend as well.
Can I get an invite to it just to stay in the loop if it's appropriate?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions for Ms. Wolverton? All right, hearing none, we do have a voting item here with the 1065 claims document. Mr. Miller and Ms. Wolverton provided in advance control document as well as the claims docket for November to December of 22. Are there any questions regarding the 1065 materials? With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the claims docket as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the 1065 school improvement fund claim docket as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? All right, Mr. Miller, would you call the roll?
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Ms. Kubaki,
Yes.
Chairman McCallum.
Yes,
Board sir.
thank you. Our next item of business is an update from Executive Director Miller on a couple contracts that he has reviewed and approved here since our last meeting.
So there's two contracts that were below the threshold, which we need to go to the board for. The first was for Mechanical Concepts to install a new HVAC system at Beveridge Elementary. There's the existing old system is being demolished and being replaced. Brand new system that was funded out of ESSER $2, and the total cost was $67,477. They did submit. They solicited a couple bids, and Mechanical Concepts was the low bidder. And then the second one was with Trafera as we've heard before, the district has a decent investment in Chromebooks used by students. And so this would be a warranty protection in case of accidental damage for 500 of those Chromebooks. This is being paid for out of ESSER 3 funds for a total of $39,500. And that coverage will be good through January of 2026. So it's a 3-year contract. And that was identified through a purchasing cooperative.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions regarding those two contracts? All right. Up next, we have consideration of 3 contracts that exceed the executive director's approval authority and so require our consideration. We have Mr. Williamson here from the district to present those. Mr. Williamson?
Yeah. All right, thank you, Chairman Adam. I will first start with the security detection system, which I think might come on our screen. And then DUAB members, you have the summary in front of you that provides it for you as well. This one is a concealed weapon detection system, and we are proposing a couple different vendors here, primarily due to the functionality and the cost. In layman's terms, if you've been to any kind of larger event in the past several years, you've probably walked through one of these and maybe didn't even know it. Or you did, and it's much more, it's much quicker than a traditional metal detector. And it can handle a much higher flow of people so that you don't have a very long line, or people avoid using traditional metal detectors because of how difficult it is to check people one by one. So we're proposing these 3 machines, one for each of the schools at the secondary level, so that we can use them on a day-to-day basis, but also for the large events that the secondary schools create. Would you like me to keep going or stop for questions?
Are there any questions regarding this particular contract?
I just have a quick question. Has this received DOE approval yet?
Yeah, so we have a general activity in ESSER 3 that says a large amount of funding for security items as dictated by the security report that we presented quite a while ago, and this was one of the outcomes of that. So that security line item is in there and approved in our grant.
Other questions regarding this particular item? If none?
Okay. The next one, we put out an RFP for this one as well, to replace 2 failing chiller systems. It's industry standard to have multiple chillers so that if one goes down, the entire school doesn't lose the proper heating, or in this case, cooling. Flint Park Academy and Williams both only have 1 functioning chiller due to the other chiller being quite old and ineffective and no longer functioning. So we did an RFP for this. This is also in our ESSER budget, but this one is ESSER 2 this time, to be able to get these chillers. If you are an HVAC expert, which I am not, these things have a long lead time, and so it's been important to get it placed and seek your approval so that hopefully, that's why you see a long timeline here through December 23, because it might honestly take that long for them to actually arrive and get installed. And then a very similar request is going to be next month for West Side specifically. That one is now done as well. But it wasn't quite ready to include on this project.
Thank you for working with Mr. Joyce and the Board of Accounts on navigating the timeliness of payments and how we can do that appropriately.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I mean, it's important that we protect the government units, and I know that there's different legislation out there that there is a timeline issue. It has to do with, a lot of it is pandemic related, but that doesn't mean we need to relinquish controls over the fundings that we have because we do have limited funding. So I think these are important, and I think this shows that even the vendors are willing to work with the units of government to make sure that their dollars are protected.
Yes, yeah, I appreciate the support from you and your agency and with Mr. Miller. Not all of these things are easy to figure out, and it takes all of us to do it. So thank you for that. And then this last one, this is also an activity approved in our ESSER 3 budget. We have a line item for classroom libraries. You know, the structure of this, if you remember when we were kids, you went to the library once a week, you checked out a book, and then if you didn't like it, you waited till next week to give a different one. Hope you didn't lose it either. So the structure of this is putting libraries in classrooms so that they're much more accessible to kids. So if they finish their book, there's a large number available, ready to go right there. Teachers can also use them. They can allow student choice, pick a book that's within your reading level on this genre. So it provides more instructional access by putting them. And then we also were trying to time it so the furniture was here so that we had storage to place these. So we have a secondary request for this that's going to come shortly thereafter. But this one is ready and we're excited to get those in once we can. And this is for elementary.
I appreciate this request. This is something my own children from their school environment that I know that certainly it's easy to see the benefit of having ready access to books for children of all grades. So thank you. Are there other questions regarding this item?
Yeah, it's a general question. Is this, we're still on 1065 or?
No, so this is the 9th item on the agenda. These are just contracts
Gotcha, okay.
that we have to consider. This one is funded out of ESSER 3, if I recall, so federal funding. It's part of the federal funding.
Yes, correct.
Right. Any other questions regarding these contracts? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion. We can just take all three together if that's acceptable to the members. Motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve all three contracts in the amounts as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Miller, please call the roll.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Ms. Kabaki,
yes,
Chairman McAdams.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our scheduled business for today. Is there any new business to come before the board today? Senator Dahl.
If I could just make some closing remarks on 2 things.
Please.
I didn't wait and make, I didn't know if it was inappropriate. Because I want to make sure the entire board.
Yes.
Just a couple of things. Or questions that I hope that we can kind of research. I think 1065 will be expiring or sunsetting in a year or so or less.
2020, Ms. Wolverton, is it 2024?
It's 2025.
2025.
Okay. As I look at the list, I just want to make sure while we have this window of opportunity, are we targeting the most important things that need to be addressed in the facilities? To your point, HVAC stuff, boilers, things like that. Because I don't want us to have to come back to the state for some type of emergency fix to a school building. So if there's a true analysis of every building, all the infrastructure that the district has, what's the highest need to be addressed?
Yeah, we did a facility study several years ago and that guided our work. With this most recent approval with the chillers, and then with next month's chiller for West Side, all HVAC, heating and cooling for every single school in the district is going to be either new or fully operational. None of the schools are going to be on their last legs, so we're not going to have any, Roosevelt kind of related issues, if you remember from the past. Every single roof, it has been addressed or will be addressed with this money. So the things that are absolutely pertinent to being fully operational have been addressed. And that really is why some of the other things that we viewed as would be nice to do, but we didn't necessarily have the money because we had to target the money to the things that are absolutely required to make sure that schools are open. So I'm very proud of our capital projects team, our maintenance team, Nicole's team, that we've made tremendous progress on the facilities, and we'll be in good shape.
You'll be good to, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I appreciate your question because that's one that we have asked periodically over the last couple of years, just to ensure that we're reevaluating them. We asked that at the time we were looking at ESSER. I think we asked it just 6 months ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. Is this the highest and best use of the dollars we have, knowing that we have this window? The other thing that we have challenged MGT and the school to prepare the district for is a plan to continue to maintain their property and their capital infrastructure going forward. And that's a bigger challenge. It's not one that many school corporations do well at all. But it's one that we have challenged them to make room for in the budget and to have a plan for financially so that we do not get into a situation where you run into urgent needs and instead we are just dealing with the routine on a regular basis.
Right. You mentioned ESSER dollars. That's separate from American Rescue Plan funding. Is that one?
So American Rescue Plan is the parent name of the last stimulus bill. And so when I say ESSER 3, that is interchangeable with the American Rescue Plan. And that's the first one, the CARES Act, ESSER 1 is done. That timeline is done. Gary's exhausted those all. ESSER 2, that was the smallest bucket of money of ESSER. No, that one was only about $4 million, and we really used it for hand sanitizer, shields, pandemic. ESSER 2, I forget the parent name, it's like CSSRA, something like that. That one we do have some money left, but it's pretty much all obligated, and that one is good through activities for September 30th of this year. So most of the things that you're going to see come up on the docket this year during your time with us is going to be ESSER 3 activities, which is the American Rescue Plan. And that is good through September 30th.
What's the
next year?
What was the starting balance and where are we today?
46 million was how much we got for ESSER 3. The amount that we've spent actually liquidated, I can look, there's a dashboard on DOE's website that has real time. I believe it's in the neighborhood of 10 million that we've actually liquidated, but that number is a little misconceived, or a little confusing because that's what we've truly paid out. What we've obligated, issued contracts for, and we don't pay, and as Paul says, we don't pay until they do the work, right? We've obligated much more than that, but it's just haven't actually paid it out.
What's the allowable spend for those dollars?
So anything that's pandemic related, which is quite flexible. The reason why we're doing HVAC and roofing is we've been able to put a direct tie to climate conditions, breathing of the school, not having mold and so on. So pandemic related, and then anything else that's allowed in federal law for federal education, so tutoring, academic support. The big issue with that is we don't want to commit ourselves to things that are going to still require, other dollars to carry on after that money is gone. So you have to balance it. It's a lot of money in a one-time thing that you have to carry.
Right. So it's more prudent to look at those one-time projects. So for example, a lot of towns and cities use their ARP money to pay towards pension debt or something like that. is that an option for this type of situation?
So the ESSER funding rules are, even though it's part of the American Rescue Plan, there are different rules for the different programs under ARP. So, and since in Indiana, pensions are obligated by the state and not the local school district, we pay into, you'll hear the governor talk about paying down pension rates, but that's not a thing for us. But to your point, that's why we've invested. Nicole mentioned our liability insurance is greatly decreased because we have better buildings now. And we're paying for other things like better HVAC that's going to lower our utility bills. So even though it's a one-time thing, it is going to lower our ongoing costs in other dollars.
In total, and this is a number we've shared before, but we haven't had the benefit of seeing, in terms of capital, with these dollars in 1065, I believe the total is around 42 million in total capital investment. Through those two buckets of money, to then what else can be done with the federal dollars. He has
It just pulls up on the back here. This is from the December meeting, so it's not totally up to date, but just roughly ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. So we called ESSER 1 CARES. I think ESSER 3 is rescue plan. I forget what ESSER 2 is called, but ESSER 1 is already spent now. We're still working on ESSER 2. That money would have to be spent by the end of this year. ESSER 3 has to be spent by the end of next year. So you see how much more we have to go. Blue is what we have spent. Orange is what we total have to spend with the grant.
Yeah, if you got a detailed description on what it can be spent for, I'd love to see, just out of curiosity, what that could be. That's a lot of money.
It is.
correct.
For another year.
And I think to David's point, much of that has been obligated through contracts, just like the ones we've approved.
So much of 2 is obligated, but not much of 3.
A decent amount of 3 is obligated as well, but ESSER 2 is almost entirely
Right.
ESSER 3 does have some unobligated, but we did submit to DUAB, and I think either I can give it to you or he can, a detailed line item budget of what we're going to do with those dollars.
Okay.
And then anything that we do and present to you all, we point to, Pete, that's what mine is. When we submit something to him. So now the allowability is greater than that. That's what we've chosen to do with it. And you can see the exacts in there.
You recall that there were conversations the last time you were on this board, we were having conversations, and I really appreciate your advocacy on that point. We need a plan for these ESSER dollars. It's just too much money not to have a plan. And working in conjunction with Nathan, Dr. McNulty and others, they were able to pull together a plan that represented those priorities and allocations and really an item by item budget of how that would be spent. We approved that budget, and then they've come back to us periodically, I believe even at the last meeting, to request modifications to that as they've either had money free up or priorities have changed. But it's an opportunity for us to oversee that money and really keep an eye on how that's being directed.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that a lot of people miss, that local government units weren't imposed much of the same restrictions that educational institutions were with the ARPA money. And it came like through the education, through what they call these ESSER grants. And as opposed to this money coming to the local government and saying, okay, use it for revenue replacement. And then you come up with a plan on how you want to spend the money. Educational institutions were given, here's more of a guideline of a list of things you can use it on. Now you come up with a plan within that guideline, but ESSER still rules more so than what regular local governments had, where, it came to the point of identify, lost revenue. We're going to move this over here. Then you basically can use it however you want. And that's what happened there, but schools didn't have that same opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. So we get that information and be helpful moving forward in the future.
Yeah.
Last thing and this is more for DUAB members, that with this session, I know everyone knows that this is an important session for the Gary School Corporation. been in communication with Senator Mitchell. I'm glad that he's always been willing to listen and work with me. Members of the community have met with Senator Brown because she served on DUAB as well. I encourage everybody to take a strong look at the bill that I have as well, Senate Bill 424, 436, as it relates to the Gary School Corporation. There's going to be some difference in philosophy of what that governance structure looks like. I'm totally against what Michigan is proposing. However, I think we need to have a conversation, and I'm looking to DUAB, and I'm sure I know you guys have talked to Commissioner about it. I'm looking to DUAB members to weigh in based off what you've seen and heard from the community during your times coming here, especially. I think over the years of this process, a totally appointed board by a state entity or state person is totally unacceptable. Just as a citizen of Gary, I think that's just where I'm going to stand on that. So I'm hopeful by you all being hands-on in this process from the beginning, you'll be able to articulate what you've heard from folks in the city of Gary. I also think that there's some things that in his bill that are missed opportunities. So talking about putting some safeguards on several things, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Look at Senate Bill 436. Reach out to me if you have questions. As he prepares to give this bill a hearing, I'm sure the community is going to weigh in on it. I feel optimistic that we can land somewhere where both the community and the state, we can walk away from this process knowing that there's a plan in place to transition. I know for a fact the state of Indiana doesn't want to continue to do this for any other school corporation, let alone just for Gary. So let's do this in a way that is responsible, and we're not going to leave the district hanging, you know, with any type of unrealistic goals or objectives from a fiscal perspective. We know from an academic perspective, there's a lot of work to be done. So yes, I am asking for some level of loan forgiveness. And I remember it's in Bill 567, DUAB is the entity that can suggest that. It's not going to happen if you guys don't suggest some type of loan forgiveness. To let the district come back without any type of relief, I don't think it puts it in a as strong a position as it can be. I know, quote unquote, this is setting a precedent for every other school corporation when asked for loan forgiveness, but there's no other school corporation in the state that's experienced or been in the predicament that we're in. So I don't think we can use the argument that we're setting a precedent for others to ask for loan forgiveness. Right? I know there's others that may be teetering on fiscal issues, but I don't think it's not going to be unlike what we are going through today. So I just wanted to express that in my first meeting back, that I'm asking everyone, advisors to people, let's just not sit back and let the General Assembly play with this, because they're going to listen to it, because this board has been a part of this process since the very beginning, and this can get this can be very collaborative, or this can be very confrontational as us against them, like we've seen in the past when it comes down to Gary-related issues. And I think this is the time for us to really show some leadership when it comes down to this issue. We listen to the community. Having an appointed board from a state body forever is unacceptable. That can't happen. That can't happen. People in the community deserve local representation. And we just need to figure out how do we get it there. So I just want to make sure I communicate that to them.
Thank you. All right. The business to come before the board today. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.